Hey, what's up everyone? Today we are going to be going over the facial nerve branches. It's Adam the Science Tutor, and let's get started. So, as you guys can see, I drew a tiny zebra biting a cake. That's going to be a mnemonic to help us remember the facial nerve branches. So, a tiny zebra bit my cake. A tiny zebra bit my cake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 branches off our facial nerve. So the only tricky part is that the A, there's going to be a P along with it. So posterior auricular. So think of behind our ear. Tiny for temporal. Z for zygomatic. Zygomatic. B for buccal. And think of buccinator, so kind of in our cheek area. M or my for mandibular. Trying to show you all my drawing too. Pretty proud of that one. All right, and C, cake for cervical. So posterior auricular, think of auricular as ear, and then posterior, so it's going to go behind the ear relatively. Temporal, think of our temporal, and so it's temporal, so it's above the zygomatic bone. Zygomaticus, think of zygoma bone. Buccal, think of cheek. Mandibular, think of our mandible. And then cervical, think of our neck. And that'll guide you guys along with where these branches are according to the face. So just to give you guys a little heads up, that gland in the middle is going to be our parotid gland, and it's going to connected our secreting most of our saliva. So it's going to be a parotid gland, and it's going to have a parotid duct as well. So that's what the thing in the middle is. It's not a part of the nerves. It's a gland. And the parotid duct is a duct, not a nerve. So cool. And there's a little hands way you could do this as well. So if you follow it, A, where my thumb's at, tiny zebra bit my, so my 5 fingers, and then cake going down. So if we start at the top here, we'll have an A, but let's circle. I'll show you guys the midpoint. The midpoint right now it's our facial nerve, so that's what we're having branches off of course. So that's where they're all coming off of, is the facial nerve. And we're gonna start it off with our A. So our A goes behind the ear. If you guys remember, it's called the posterior auricular nerve because it's posterior behind the ear, posterior auricular nerve. A, remember my thumb trick? A tiny zebra bit my cake. So PA, so that could only be one of them. Posterior auricular. So very cool. So that's A. Now let's do tiny. Tiny right here. So tiny right in there. What does tiny stand for? If you guys remember from the mnemonic, tiny is temporal. It's also running across our temple. So that makes it kind of easy. So a tiny, or posterior auricular, tiny for temporal. I know I'm going to be repeating this like crazy. So temporal branches. A tiny zebra's next, and that's going across our zygoma bone. It's my middle finger. I'm not flicking y'all off, but it's my middle bone, so zygoma bone. So what can be there where my middle finger's at? That's our zygomatic branches. Zygomatic branches in green. And green will be our zygomatic branches. And I think I added the lower branch to the, I added the lower branch part of our buccal branches. However, it looks to be here on part of the zygomatic branches, but the buccal branches will have a lot more branches, so I added it a part of the buccal branch. So the buccal branch is going to go to the cheek. It's where our buccinator muscle is at. So our buccinator muscle. Now a tiny zebra bit my, we're on the mandible, so that could be our mandibular branches. Our mandibular branches. A tiny zebra bit my. So in dark blue is our mandibular branches. Pretty easy. And then last but not least, and that's the one off of our fingers, it's going one down, and think of the neck, and think of cake. Cake stands for our cervical branches, so it's going to be cervical branches. So cervical branches. So in pink there, it's going to be our cervical branch, our branches. So very cool. So once again, you guys could use the hand motion. So a tiny zebra, bit my cake, or just recognize where you are on the body. So we have the auricular, and they all kind of stand for one another. So it makes it pretty easy. But very cool, guys. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any questions, please leave a comment.